Hi everybody and welcome back. Today what I have is a Poulan 3818 chainsaw. It's not running properly, so I'm going to show you what I would do when a saw comes in with those symptoms. And here's the saw here. There's the model number. It's a 38cc chainsaw. It's got an 18-inch bar. As you can see here, the saw looks like new, so it hasn't been used that much. What I'm going to do is start it up outside, and I just want you to see the symptoms that this saw has before I fix it. Notice especially when I go to cut into a log what happens. Now you'll notice that it's not an issue starting the saw. If I put the choke full, it starts right away. The problem with this saw is that top end. Anyways, you saw what the saw does. It started up good, it ran good, it didn't have quite the high RPMs that it should at top end, and then after a while it just bogs down when you go to throttle up. I'm going to take it in the shop. I'm just going to show you quickly what I'm going to do in this case. Now the very first thing I'm going to do is just pull the cord by hand just to feel the compression. You can also do a compression test if you want. I'm just going to pull it up slowly and feel the resistance. And it feels pretty good, so I know it's not a compression issue in this case. Now with the Torx T25, I'm going to take off the top cover here just to access the carburetor properly. You want to loosen the 3 screws that hold the cover on. You noticed I pushed the safety brake forward. That's to make it easier to get the cover off. Normally I wouldn't take the cover off to do this, but what I'm going to do today is adjust the carburetor, and by having this off it's easier for me to show you where these adjusting screws are. For those of you not familiar with small engines, the carburetor is right here. It's the metallic part over here. And here are the adjusting screws. They're right down here, and as you can see it's not a slotted screw. They're just splined, and for some of you guys watching out there, you may wonder, how am I going to adjust this carburetor? Well, to adjust this carburetor, I'll be using this Carburetor Adjustment tool today. As you can see, it's got a splined end. I do have a video showing this tool in one of my video collections, so I'm going to post a link to that video under this video. One last thing I want to tell you before I start adjusting the carb is that sometimes the carburetor screws have limiter caps on them. Kind of like this, so you would have to remove these if you have these limiters on the adjusting screws. You can just pull them off with pliers or break them off if you want. Sometimes I break them off and don't bother putting any back on. The one good thing about them though is they may prevent your carburetor from actually coming out of adjustment again when they're actually on the screw. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab my adjusting tool. I'm going to turn out the H screw, which is the high speed screw, because I'm having a problem with the chainsaw at high speed. It idles well, so I'm not really going to touch the L screw, or the low screw it's called. Now the reason why I am turning it out is because it's starving for fuel. It starts up good with the choke on, and like I said, it idles good. So basically it's just starving for fuel at top end. So by turning out the screw, I'm just letting a bit more fuel get into the engine, and it should be okay. Now this remedy should work with this problem. It may not always be the same problem that you have, but if you have a very similar symptoms as I have today, it should resolve your problem. I get a lot of these Poulan chainsaws. They're almost brand new, and they always almost need some adjustment on the carburetor after a few months of use. It's the same thing with those green weed eaters you can buy. So all I'm going to do is insert my tool on the screw here when the saw is running, and just basically turn it out until the saw revs up. And I will be holding the throttle wide open like this to get the best RPMs out of it. So what I do is I turn it out until it revs at its highest, and then I just turn it out just slightly more, just to give it that little extra richness, but not too much to the point that it bogs down the RPMs. So I do need to start the saw to do this, obviously. I am going to run it without the cover because I'm only doing it for about a minute or so. It's not going to overheat and burn out the engine with just a short period of use like that. And it's going to be much easier to see the screws with the cover off. Now that I'm confident it's adjusted properly, I've put the top cover back on, and I'm going to try it out in those logs again. Anyways, I'm back in the shop with it. It runs pretty good. It's not going to cut like a Steel or a Husqvarna, but for Poulan this size, it's about as best as I'll get it. Another tip too is if you can't adjust your carburetor so that the saw can run properly, the next best thing to do may be to put a new carb kit in the carburetor or just get a brand new carb. In the US, you can get carbs for these pretty cheap. They're a bit more money here in Canada, so sometimes it's almost worth putting in a carb kit first. But if you're not too mechanically inclined, I suggest to just get a brand new carburetor and put it on. Now you'd want to make sure the rest of the saw is good before spending that kind of money into it. So you can do a compression test. If you get over 120 psi, it should be good. So thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to go watch the video on the adjusting tool, and you'll see me next time. Have a nice day.